Nancy Pelosi, as I mentioned, just spoke moments ago, said she has not read the transcript from the meeting with, or the phone call with the Ukrainian president, but she did just say this.
I haven't seen it, so I've just come from our own meeting. But the transcript is, the fact is that the President of the United States, in breach of his constitutional responsibilities, has asked a foreign government to help him in his political campaign at the expense of our national security, as well as undermining the integrity of our elections. That cannot stand. He will be held accountable. No one is above the law.
As the Speaker of the House just a moment ago, John Roberts.
She said, I haven't seen the transcript, and then proceeds to condemn the president based on a transcript that she hasn't read. I mean, the point of this transcript is that the big thing that everybody was talking about was that there was a quid pro quo. That was the president withholding some $391 million in military and other aid to the Ukraine on with the condition that Zelensky had to open an investigation into Biden. That language, or even that suggestion, exists nowhere in this document. And yet, without having seen the document, Nancy Pelosi says that the president abrogated his constitutional duties and sought help for his election campaign. And then there's the idea of the quid pro quo. I mean, if you look at this document and you believe that the people who are in the Situation Room who transcribed it accurately.
It's public, by the way. Anybody can read it for themselves now.
Well, what Democrats will say is that this paragraph, as Catherine mentioned, talking about the purchase of Javelin missiles, the aid that the U.S. has provided, the fact that the Europeans have not stepped up, this is what Democrats will say, and the very next line saying, I would like you to do us a favor, and saying there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. They will say that is an implied. That conversation that preceded it is implied.
Can we throw
now,
that up
is that going to be the moment that gets a vote on an impeachment article? Right. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi doesn't think so yet. She hasn't moved to vote to authorize an inquiry.
Seems around 200. Go.
This is the quote that you're talking about. Throw it up, number 3. I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. This is President Trump talking to the Ukraine president. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say Ukraine has it. Take on that.
Right. I think this is, frankly, a Rorschach test, which always happens with anything that releases, right? So we have essentially a lot of things that Democrats will say, well, it's implied, and the GOP will say, well, it's not clear, and that's your interpretation of it, right? So the mention of Javelin, that was by President Zelensky, but we had President Trump saying, well, I wouldn't say that it's reciprocal necessarily. Things are happening that are not good, talking about other countries, but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. Democrats will see that as him implying this form of pressure. I also want to point out that same subject to interpretation that we've seen with the Hunter Biden situation that was also covered in here, which is that the argument by the Democrats already is that the Ukrainian probe was shelved before the actions by the vice president, that Hunter was never accused of wrongdoing by Ukrainian authorities, and that prosecutor was widely criticized by the West as failing to tackle corruption. So they're seeing all of this as the complete opposite that the GOP will. Final point, again, we have not yet moved for articles. There has been no vote. And just like in August, what Chairman Nadler said to CNN, which was, well, we'll figure that out by the end of the year, this is still part of that investigation. There has been no formal vote yet. This is all goes into the pot.